guess it's just I started asking more questions. I started listening to people more. I say about a year and a half ago, I was very obnoxious, and like when people used to raise issues about feminism and stuff, I'd just dismiss it. And then it was actually a TED talk that made me just start listening more. It had nothing to do with feminism at all. It had nothing to do with gender. There's something to do with obesity and how people treat obese people. And then I kind of took that on, and it was just more about me being empathetic. So just understanding people, like how people are, and putting myself in their shoes and understanding why they do the things they do. So from that, I started to listen to more women and get an understanding of the things that they go through, their daily experiences, and then I just have a look back a year later. So
what have you learned in your journey?
Growing up, I wasn't a feminist from a young age. How I found feminism, first of all, was definitely through sociology AS level. I did know about feminism initially in secondary school, but I never really aligned myself with it, especially because of how it was portrayed in the media. So I tried to deter from it. But when I did AS sociology, which I love sociology in general, so when I did sociology for A levels, and I was learning more about the feminist movement, and my teacher, who was amazing, she was a feminist as well, so I learned a lot from her. And then that led on to me going outside of college and researching more about feminism and researching about black women and if they identify with feminism. And then I read this book by the president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, called This Child Will Be Great. It's not a feminist book or anything, but I felt empowered by the words that she had as an autobiography. So I felt empowered by how she overcame so much as a woman in Africa. And Africa is largely sexist as well still, but people try to deny that, but it is quite sexist. So I learnt from her, and then it just went on to me reading more about bell hooks, Audre Lorde, and looking at Harriet Tubman, and looking at the civil rights movement, and how there were black feminists in the civil rights movement, such as Angela Davis. So reading up on all of that, I just felt, why should I have to hide or deny the fact that I identify strongly with this movement?
I find it very difficult to kind of summarise what feminism is in a sentence, because for me it's not just one thing, shall we say. I think in its simplest form, it is the movement to achieve equality for all people. So contrary to popular belief, it's not exclusively about women, it's not exclusively about white women, because women as a group, we're not homogenous in any way, shape or form. So for me, feminism should be very much part of the greater struggle for equality for all. Feminists don't agree on a definition. We have yet to agree on a definition. My hero, Bell Hooks, very much laments that we don't agree on a definition, but I think my definition of feminism is very much in line with hers. It's the movement to achieve equality for all people. And that means, it can't exist within patriarchy. I don't want it to exist within matriarchy. But yeah, it's the movement to achieve equality for all people.
It's simple, because with patriarchal culture, it does benefit men. Obviously, that's what patriarchy is. It's a male-dominated system, and it tends to dehumanize women. So feminism came about, the movement came about for people to recognize that women are human beings and we are important in order for social order, in order for the world to just run smoothly as best as possible.
So yeah, I mean, there are lots of different types of feminism, but I would say, you've got, black feminism, intersectional feminism, you've got feminism that maybe concentrates more on LGBTQI issues, mainstream white feminism, but I think it's quite hard. You've got environmental feminism too.
Some religions tend to come into it, because you can get Christian feminists, and some people see that as an oxymoron, or Muslim feminists, because it's a bit like within their religious textbooks, people would argue that there are sexist things within those books, but that's for them to to decide, you know?
That it can mean different things to different people. That's the thing. Like, there's obviously a clear definition of what feminism is, but for a person in the US, or a white woman in the US, it will be completely different to an African woman, like in Nigeria, for example. Their feminism won't necessarily match. I mean, I understand the same principles, but they won't have the same goals. So, for example, a woman in the US might just be to have the same amount of pay as a man, just not to get catcalled, whereas a woman in Nigeria, India, it might be to stop child marriage, FGM, something like that.
I identify as a black feminist, an intersectional feminist.
What I identify with is strongly black feminism as well as intersectional feminism.
Definitely intersectional feminism.
He looks at race and class, which are important. Race, class and sexism are important things right now in the world because we live in a capitalistic world. So we need to look at how those two also affect women as well, because the experiences of a black middle class woman will be different to the experience of a black working class woman.
The example that I used earlier about the woman in the US and the woman in Nigeria, I think what's important is to take note and pay attention to the suffering that other people are facing. So, because because pay and might be something that you're interested in, but you should also focus on the issues that women in another country will face. And I think some feminism does tend to overlook those issues.
And for me, really and truly, that's the only type of feminism, the intersectional feminism, because I feel you can't be a feminist if you can't look at people in their entirety, because if you don't do that, you won't be able to understand the context and the background and the history of their oppression. So for me, if I'm oppressed in any way, it's not just because I'm black, it's not just because I'm a woman, it's not just because I'm of the working class, it's not just because of this, it's not just because I'm this, it's not just because I'm that, it's because I am a black working class female who, you know, originates from Africa, who originates from Sierra Leone. There's lots of different assets and parts of my identity. And so that's why I think intersectional feminism is really the only type of valid feminism, because if you don't look at people in their entirety, it just really can't work.
Emma Watson's speech the other week was a perfect example. She didn't really address some of the key issues within feminism. So FGM, child marriages, sex trafficking, all those little things that won't affect many people in the US or the UK, in the Western world, but they'll affect people in Eastern Europe, Asia, Africa, South America. So there's two sides. A lot of the time people think, I'm just using it to try and get girls and that. A lot of people do use feminism as a way to get girls, but they'll usually get found out because something which they obviously haven't thought about will give them away. But I do think if I start talking about it, men start listening more because I'm talking about it, which in itself causes a problem because it says that they don't value a woman's opinion the same as they value my opinion, which says a lot. So it's trying to tackle that issue. So if a man does start to listen to me, then I'd kind of address that first, that a woman's opinion should be equal as my opinion, and just because I'm a man, my voice should be louder as such.
Black men would say that feminism came to destroy the black family structures, and how black men because there's so many black men that I've encountered, and they were like, oh, feminism is a white women's movement, and you really brought it to the black family to destroy us, and blah blah blah. But when you research and you read about things that were going on in Africa, we have people like one of the Kuti family, I don't know if you know them, you know, like Fela Kuti. Yeah, basically his mum, we basically say that she was a feminist. So we have people like that in Africa, and you're trying to say that feminism came from white women to destroy black family structures. And I feel like it's about this whole the power, and they know that they're going to lose this power over women. So for me, that's why I needed to align myself with it, so I can also try and help in educating black men and for them to understand where we're coming from. Because although they have their own issues because of race as being a black person, we also have our own double issue, race and being a woman.
Yeah, I think especially for a black woman, not only have they got to fight the whole sexism battle, they've got to fight the whole racism battle as well. And I think as men, as black men as well, sometimes we tend to overlook that issue. We tend to think that the whole being black thing encompasses everything else, it overshadows that. So when a black woman, for example, will speak about her issues, a black man might say, oh, but it's harder for me, I'm a black man. Which, yeah, in some cases, in recent weeks, we've seen with Mike Brown being killed, and being a black man is tough, but being a black woman is just as tough. And putting things on a pedestal like that is not going to overcome the main challenge.
I think it is fair to say that within maybe black masculinity, there is this kind of fear of this thing called feminism. And I do think really that's founded on grave misunderstanding, just as any real negative feeling towards feminism. I think it's founded on grave misunderstanding, because I find it hard, unless equality for all people is something that will not benefit you. And often if you're at the top of the hierarchy, that's why you're going to be against it. But otherwise, for the vast majority of us, that's not a bad thing. But I think black masculinity, in its broadest sense, may feel quite challenged by feminism, because the stereotypes are, that these women want to now be independent and, hate men and do this kind of thing, just really silly things. And I think the misunderstanding, is that, feminists are man haters. They want to divide. They want to, just kind of paint black men in negative light. And that's something that, particularly, I myself and kind of the work of No Flying, we really want to challenge, because if we're speaking on racial lines, black men and black women, we are two halves of one whole.
Feminism, like I said before, is about the destruction of patriarchal culture. Now, with patriarchy/patriarchy, however you want to say it, it benefits men. It does, because that's what it is, a male-dominated system. But it also tells men, it dictates to men how they should feel and how they should not open up about their emotions. But men aren't robots. We're human beings.
It tells you that you can't express your emotions, which is why so many black men between the ages of 16 to 24 commit suicide.
Women are taught from early to be able to cry. They're taught they should be able to like hugs and feel love and blah blah blah. Whereas men are told from young that, big boys don't cry. When you're hurt, you shouldn't cry. You're a big boy, don't cry. Why are you crying for? Things like that. And then they continuously to hold that emotion and lock it up, and then that leads to them not being able to form, most of the time not being able to form honest relationships, because they're unable to open up about certain things. And when I see some people some men say how they've never cried and they will never cry, and crying is not for them, it's sad, because sometimes crying is a good release for people. It's a good release when there's no words to explain how you're feeling. Sometimes just shedding tears, it's a good release, and there's nothing emasculating about that. And that's where it comes from, because crying is seen as a feminine thing, and because women are seen as weak, men don't want to cry because they don't want to be viewed as weak. But women aren't weak. Crying is not going to make you weak. Crying or showing your emotion just shows that you are a human being, and there's nothing wrong with being a human being. So
it's the whole idea of men being told to man up, boys being told to man up. So if a boy cries or something because he's lost a football match or something, his dad would tell him to man up, be a man or something like that. Hold your head up, don't cry. Tears are just part of emotion at the end of the day. Just let someone embrace their emotions. That makes them human. It doesn't make them any less of a man. Men perpetuating violence. We live in a very violent society, not just in the Western world, in the East as well, and in the South. It's very violent. In America, you only have to look at gun culture. That's a very violent country in itself, and a lot of it's to do with how they address masculinity. So it's almost an eye for an eye. If someone wrongs me, then I should be allowed to wrong them back, which is the reason why you're allowed to carry a gun, because it's the whole. If someone's walking down the street and they offend me in any way, if I want, I can shoot them. And although it's illegal in America, it just shows that no, they don't care about that. They don't value life like that. And I think men have a hard time trying to value life, not just like a female life, but a male life as well. They don't value life as much as women value life. Men will commit more murders than women. I'm not saying that women won't commit murders, they will. A lot of the time it's out of passion. Men, a lot of the time it's out of passion, but you'll find that the statistics are very disproportionate.
Patriarchy is ugly. It doesn't want you, if you are not a hyper-masculine, hegemonic male, you cannot prosper. You know, patriarchy advocates that you as a man basically almost have to work single-handedly to bring in, to bring home the bacon. It says that your women cannot be equal with you. It means that, and if women are not equal with you, it means you can't have the fullest support. It means you have to do everything 100%, 150%, when really you could do 50 and your partner could put in 50 and you both make that 100%.
Feminism benefits me, and it also tells men that it's okay when you're unable to provide because of external factors, not because you're lazy, but when you're unable to provide because you lack a job or just any other issues, it's okay. As long as an important thing is you're within a household that appreciates efforts being made. As long as you're within a household that appreciates the fact that yes, they understand that you're unable to provide, but that doesn't make you any less of a man. It's okay. You're a man regardless. You're a man if you're gay. You're a man if you like to wear skinny jeans. You're a man if you like crying. You're a man if you like to write love poems. You're a man if you you're a man. You know, your manhood is up down to you. That's your identity. Don't let anyone dictate that. And that's what feminism is about. For men and women to recognize that their womanhood and their manhood is for them, not for anyone else to dictate, not for media to tell them that this is what they're meant to be. Yeah.
Oh, feminism is a fantastic, beautiful thing for men because patriarchy is ugly.
I think the ideal situation would be for black men to listen first. So listen to their women, listen to why things are the way they are. And that understanding, you can come together and start forming an alliance. The domestic violence thing that happened with NFL players is a perfect example. A lot of men, not just black men, white men as well, a lot of men were asking, what did she do to provoke him? Why didn't she leave him? And it's those questions which almost vilify the victim here. And so it's just addressing those key things. So I think for black men in particular, listen first, try and get an understanding, and try not to place things on a kind of ranking system. So there's no one wins at the end of the day. Like it's the Fashion Olympics, we can always argue about who got it worse, Native Americans, for example, or black slaves. At the end of the day, both people were victims of a very oppressive regime, and at the end of the day, there's only one clear winner, and that's white supremacists. So.
From black men, what I ask for is support and understanding. These are the things that I ask for, because without support and understanding, it's just not really a way we can move forward together. And I think I always say it's very, very, very important if we are to be powerful and to exist as we should exist in our fullest potential. Black men and women have to unite. It's very important that we unite, and we can't unite if we're not willing to understand each other, because we are one race. And no matter where we come from in the diaspora, no matter where we are today, there are things we do have in common. There are things we have in common that nobody else has in common with us. And so it's very important that we understand each other. We can't be uplifted by other people. We can't uplift ourselves if we don't want to uplift each other. And so from black men, I ask for understanding, I ask for support, and I ask for a willingness to just stand with black women.
I say the very first step is listening. So listening to people, not butting in when women's sharing their experiences, not asking questions like what kind of clothes were you wearing, why were you walking down that street, how much did you have to drink, what did you do to provoke him. All those questions shouldn't be asked, and they're not hard questions not to ask. You can avoid asking them, so it's just listening's key, showing some empathy, putting yourself in that person's shoes, taking yourself out of your life, out of your male privilege as such. And then I guess after that, listening to that experience, reading more. So not just articles on the internet from the Daily Mail or Huffington Post, or watching an Emma Watson kind of speech, but actually reading books. So Bell Hooks, reading some books by her, getting an understanding of, because she touches on masculinity as well, and patriarchy, and the ways that men need to change. So she doesn't just address issues that women face.
I've been needing to listen. That's the most important thing. Listen when black women are talking about their struggles, because we listen to them, and we also face the struggles that they face in terms of race. But they need to understand that sexism is real, as much as they want to think that it's not, because race is the most important thing. And I'm not saying that it's not the most important thing, but they need to recognize when black women are talking, they're talking from experience. And if you're not willing to listen to the black women that you claim to love, what's the point? Then there will always be tension in the black community, and there will never be understanding. Do you know, like when I have discussions, or when people have discussions on Twitter about street harassment towards black women, it's so disgusting to see there are black men saying it's not real, it's fake, you're chatting nonsense. Oh, it's a compliment. People coming up to the street to you and talking to you, but they're not recognizing that black women are saying, we said no, but people are still pursuing us. It's just like, imagine if someone comes up to you, yeah, and they're trying to talk to you, and you rejected them and say no thank you, then they start cussing you. Oh, this, I didn't like you anyway, you ugly. That's harassment, just because you said no, because you rejected their advances. Why can't you just be polite and just be like, okay, fair enough? Now imagine you're constantly walking down the street and you're getting honks. Like one time, I was just going to Stratford and this bus driver honked at me. Why are you honking at me for? What do you want me to do, run after you on the bus? It's things like that, people experience that, and it's usually more the voluptuous women that experiences that, because of their wide hips and the big bums. But still, a lot of women go through that, especially black women. But many black men are failing to understand that. They think it's meant to be seen as a compliment. They think that black women are just complaining, and they're not willing to listen. That's the problem. They lack listening skills. If you just sat down, listened, or read black women's opinions on certain things, then you would understand what we're trying to say, what we're trying to do, and how it benefits you, and how it creates more of a harmonious, harmonious community.
I guess with weave itself is asking why it is that you've chosen to wear weave, because if we look at it and get down to the basic principle, is that the whole idea of weave is that it comes from a Eurocentric idea of beauty, so long straight hair, which isn't really common within African diaspora and African natural hair. At the end of the day, it's a personal choice. If someone wants to wear a weave, then that's up to them, that's up to that individual, and no one should question that reason. With natural hair, it's become like a political statement, it's become something of a statement, so there's a lot more politics behind black hair. So if a black woman has frizzy hair, people will say that her hair needs to be tamed or something like that. Like if I went into work without combing my afro, if I had one, it'd be that I need to cut it because it looks unprofessional, but that's just my natural hair. I can't help the way that it goes. And I think it's just understanding that black hair in particular has so much more meaning because of the way that we've been treated over the years.
When they insult the natural hair movement, now that stems from self-hatred. People hate that word. People hate, people using self-hate because they're like, I don't hate myself, blah blah. But they don't understand what we're saying by self-hate because they've been taught to hate that the natural hair from black women, and that's also linked to white supremacy. And how, if you type in just type in hair alone, you type in beautiful hair, see the kind of hair, the images you get on Google. It's nothing to do with black women. You don't see their afros. You don't see. It's usually just straight long hair, and that's why you'd get some extremists maybe that hate weave and they don't want black women wearing weave and blah 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 blah. But I have no issues with weave because it's down to you're a free person. You can do what you want with your hair. You can do what you want with your body. And if you want to wear weave, wear weave. If you want to relax your hair, relax your hair. If you want to have natural hair, have natural hair. But just don't insult the very hair that grows from your head.
Our hair, they're all politicised by other black women, by white women, by black men, by white men, and everybody else in between. It's politicised and appropriated and all these things, really. Now with black hair, I mean, it's interesting. I think, you know, now people have noticed there is a natural hair movement going on, and you know, hair now isn't just hair, quite frankly, and I don't think it really has ever been just hair, because our existences are politicised. And yeah, sure, I think on the surface, you know, it's very positive, of course it is. People are going around with their natural hair or in natural hairstyles, so, you know, braids, things like that, not perming, not using weave, and these things are kind of showing an acceptance, a kind of, I guess, a fuck you to the establishment, basically, a saying, you know, I very much embrace what I was given, what I was born with, and I think that's really cool, I think it's really great. But I would say one thing, weave itself isn't the problem. You know, I'm pretty sure that a black woman developed weave, and white women are also using it, and no one really talks about that. You know, these things are not the problem in and of themselves, it's why people use them. So it's why someone feels that they need to perm their hair, it's why they feel that they need to use a weave. If they just like it, like for instance, Rihanna is a good example. She changes her hair all the time, and I really don't mostly think it's because she hates her hair. I think it's just like she likes to have fun with it, kind of thing, you know. Beyonce, I don't know. She's only really ever done that blonde wig, that blonde lace front, and perhaps, you know, for her, that's how she wants to present herself in her professional life. When she goes on holiday, she has her braids and stuff. But yeah, so hair means different things to very many different people, but I think it's your reasons behind it. So yeah, these things, weave in and of itself is not a bad thing, but if you use it because you are ashamed of your hair, because you're ashamed of your picky hair, then you have a problem, and you really need to address that problem. You should not be taking in the constant things that we are fed, that black is not beautiful. I mean, look at the surprise that everyone expressed when Lupita Nyong'o came on the scene. Okay, we've been beautiful, we have been beautiful, and we always have been beautiful. Dark-skinned women and women of every spectrum of black have been beautiful. And the way she's almost fetishized, you know, Lupita, it's very strange, and I'm very happy for her, you know, and long may Queen Lupita reign. But I just think these things, you know, they're positives, and also they show a very bizarre negative side of society. So the fascination with the natural hair movement is an interesting one. And yeah, it just shows us that prior to this point, we weren't so proud of who we are and who we were and what we've come from. And so yeah, unfortunately, I wish hair was just hair, but it's not. It is politicized. So yeah, I mean, I just say, you know, long may women keep kind of rocking their natural hair, but I also think it's not right for us to stigmatise women who don't do that look. I mean, it's very hard to maintain Afro-Caribbean hair, very, very hard. And, you know, I keep mine in braids because I'm just too lazy and I can't do hair. Other people, they have their reasons, but I think, you know, I want to live in a society where my beauty isn't politicised, and my choice as to how I want to present myself isn't on judgment for everyone to have a say in all the time, you know? And that includes what I do with my hair.
The thing is with patriarchy, right, is that it's being indoctrinated from young towards men and women. So feminism and how it's portrayed in the media, most people, men and women, believe that, like I did before I wanted to identify with it. So I think that's one of the reasons why most women tend to shy away from it or bash it. But when I see women like seriously going ham against feminism, I just think, okay, especially like on social media, I'm thinking, right, okay, so you had internet clearly for that social media. You need to be on that on Twitter or Facebook or something. You probably have a bank account. Now the reason why you probably have a bank account now, you probably went to the bank by yourself to make that bank account. The reason why you had that bank account is because of feminism. Because back in the day, you know, for a woman to have a bank account, they had to be with a husband for them to just open a bank account. But here you are, bashing feminism that fought for our freedom to be able to just open a bank account. Even things like voting, maybe not all people vote, but knowing that you have the ability to vote if you want to, as a woman, is because of feminism. And that's just coming from white feminism, I guess, in general. But with black feminism, as well. I mean, I don't understand how you can talk about civil rights movements, you can talk about Black history, and you can quote all of the Angela Davis and Assata Shakur books all you want, but you will not acknowledge the fact that they were feminists as well. I don't understand how you can just go through that, because they were women, they were facing their own sexism within the Black Panther movement as well. Because guaranteed, we had sexist men within the Black Panther movement, so they were fighting two struggles. So for you to be, when I see women just insulting it, constantly berating it, saying, this and this or whatever, I just feel like most of them are either trying to beg for more, attention from patriarchal men, and for them to look like the shiny, the new Play-Doh for them to come over and play with, or they just largely misunderstood what feminism is about.
Is when women are against feminism. I think above all else, that's the most heartbreaking thing, because you're like, we're out here trying to free us from these cages and you want to remain in them. You do not understand that you are an oppressed individual. You do not want to understand it. And when you see things on social media like these movements that are, why I don't need feminism, to challenge movements that we started, that, people standing in streets of Cambridge saying why they do need feminism, really amazing reasons why this movement is important to them. You get other people trying to belittle it and, do hashtags like, why I don't need feminism. And it's silly things like, because I love men and because I want to shave my underarms and stuff. Like, no one said you can't do those things. I also shave my pubic hairs and I love men. But I still count myself as a feminist, because there is not one way to be a feminist. And, I don't even blame them, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about what feminism is, and that is the bottom line. So many people misunderstand what it is. I think people who call themselves feminists are also misunderstanding it to some extent, because there are those who might call themselves feminists, but they participate in patriarchal thought, like being anti-abortion. I think being anti-abortion is anti-feminist, quite frankly. So I mean, and yeah, I think it's just ridiculous for women to be anti-feminist, but this just says we have much work to do. It just says that until every woman understands that feminism isn't against them but with them and for them, then yeah, it's not a successful movement.
Okay. Black people in general are really hypersexualized and stereotyped, and I guess most people tend to take pride in that, with the whole phenotype of how black women is, and the whole men, their genitals, black men, blah blah. But with how black women are portrayed in the media, I think for me, I haven't really looked into the British side of things, and I think that's due to Americanization. But from what I've seen from American media and things, black women, like Tyler Perry movies, it's usually black women, that loud Christian girl, woman, constantly. You don't get the different types of black women, because we're different. We're not a monolithic group. We're different. You have the geeky ones, you have the nerds, you have the girl, and there's nothing wrong with that kind of black woman. But you also have black lesbians, you have the black atheists, black women who are atheists, you have black disabled women, you have black slim skinny women who don't have big bums and don't have wide hips. You have those kind of people, but because of the hypersexualization of black women and black people in general, and because of racism, media wants to constantly put up that stereotype of how black people are and how black people should be known. So black women are just seen as, big bums and hips, and maybe that's about it. And that's why nowadays you've got black men saying white girls with big bums are taking over now, because now they've got the big bums, and black women have nothing for them anymore, because that's how most women just see us, as black. They just see black women as, you have big bums, and that's the only thing that we have going for ourselves.
Yeah, this might seem trivial to some, but Scary Spice from Spice Girls, Mel B, she was given the Scary Spice moniker. She was given the leopard skin, leopard print kind of outfits and everything like that. She had the frizzy hair and all that, and she could have been Sporty Spice. She could have been Sporty Spice. She could have been Baby Spice. Maybe part of her character you've seen on X Factor, the way that she is, she's very outgoing, very confident, very outspoken, which there's nothing wrong with that. And her being outspoken doesn't necessarily make her, what's that word, bossy. She fit that profile at the time. I don't think that's true. Jerry Halliwell is just as outspoken. Mel C, Sporty Spice is just as outspoken. Posh and Baby Spice, definitely not. I mean, them two fit those profiles perfectly. And I think some people at the time might not have thought Mel B had that sexy appeal that Jerry Halliwell had because she was black. But potentially that could be a reason. She didn't have the same. She didn't attract men the same way that Jerry Halliwell did. So it's again just addressing that. So how black women's sexuality is different to white women's sexuality, and how we need to address that.
That media largely influences a lot of our opinions. No matter how much we like to think that we are opinionated people and we've come away from that and we can't be influenced, at the end of the day, some form of media will influence us. Whether it be by social media platforms on Twitter, we're still getting influenced somehow. We're still learning from other people. We're still getting their thoughts and then forming it into our opinions. Whether it be from just watching TV, newspapers, I think even just TV programs as well. They can form our opinions. That's how Islamophobia comes about. That's how it came about, because of how media portrays the religion, the Muslim religion. That's how the black stereotypes come about, because of how media will portray black people and black youth especially. You know, you would think that it was only black people that sold drugs. You would think that it was only black people that were selling weed, but at the end of the day, the drug company is largely owned by white people. They're the ones that are making the money, but they're not going to put that because they're trying to push a certain image about black people. So we have to recognize that the media, we can't escape it. No matter how much we try, we can't really escape it. It's a large, devilish kind of corporation, and I know you want to go into that. I'm sorry, you want to work in the media, but maybe you can bring the change.
I'm ready for the fact that
Listening is key because it shows that you're trying to understand. That's the thing. Like, listening is one of the most important communication skills. It's all to do with emotional intelligence, understanding the other person. So if I go on a date, for example, and I tell this girl all about myself, I tell her everything about me, but I barely let her have a word or say anything, and that's not really a conversation. That's me talking at her. That's a lecture. So that's why listening is key, because then I get to learn more about that particular girl and what she gets up to in life and what her goals and aspirations and such. So yeah, that's why listening is really key, because it shows that not everything's just all about you as an individual. It's about other people as well. A lot more people in our age group have taken on feminism than people in the previous generation, such as Bell Hooks' generation. She's had a harder time than we'll ever have trying to get other people involved with it. I think that'll be a key change. I'd like to see more people getting involved, more men speaking about it as well, more women speaking about it as well, not feeling that they have to hide when talking about feminism.
The ideal fantasy would be that, you know, we have more discussions in the black community about things that are affecting black people, be it racism, obviously, sexism, be it being ableism, classism. We have honest, open discussions about this and not shy away from it. Being able to talk about mental issues as well. Not hiding the fact that black people go through mental illnesses. It's not a white people thing, you know. Okay, being able to have that, I would like that in 10 years' time. I would also like for me not to be not to talking about feminism, having to explain it all the time to people, that they finally get it, or they're willing to understand it, and they're listening. That more black men are listening to what black women have to say, and are not just only listening but learning from our opinions, learning from our experiences. Because when we talk, we're not just talking just to talk. We're talking from our experiences. So they have to acknowledge that. So I'm hoping in 10 years' time, there'll be more black men on board to join the black feminist movement. They don't have to say they're a feminist, but join and understand the black feminist movement and be willing to acknowledge their privilege as a man. Even though, yes, they're a black man and they have race issues, but they're a man regardless. That's what I would like 10 years time, but I don't see that happening in 10 years time.
Optimism.
In a decade's time, I may have a son or daughter, or a son and a daughter, and I would really, really, really hate for them to have to grow up in a society like the one I've grown up in, quite frankly. I would hate for them, because be them mixed race, or be them black, or be them whatever, I would hate for them to live in a society that tells them constantly they are inferior. And no matter how much at home you tell them that they are of kings and queens and empresses, and they are of important people, and they are from the richest culture on earth, they are from the motherland, when they go outside and they leave you and they leave your front door, they are exposed to what is out there. They're exposed to the words of other people. They're exposed to the evil that exists out there. And I would very much hate, and every day, the work will be undone. They come home and you have to keep telling them that they are of kings and they are of queens. And for me, in a decade's time, and yeah, it's good to put a time limit on it, but I would really hope, but I'm not convinced that a decade is enough, but I would hope that I am not going to have to fear that my son will go out and be shot by the police because he's black. I do not want to fear that my daughter will have to worry about her hips or her thick lips or anything like that because the media tells her that she's ugly. I don't want my son to have to exist in a world where if he doesn't fit the hegemonic masculine model, he is told that he isn't normal and he's not like other men, and he's not worthy. I don't want to live in a world where I'm afraid for my daughter to walk the streets on her own, quite frankly. And I don't want to live in a world where, if I have a daughter and a son, for them to look at each other and not see themselves as brothers and sisters, and not see their fellow black men and women as brothers and sisters. I don't want them to live in a world like that. And there's so much change that I want to see. There's so much I want to see before I die. There's so much change I want to see before I have children. And, there's much work to be done. But I think, you do these things not for yourself. You do them for the people who come after you. And you do them because of the people who came before you. And you do them so that your ancestors' work and their death and their sacrifices were not in vain. You do them so that your single mother has not done all of that on her own in vain, for nothing. You do that so that your brothers and your sisters can have a better life, basically, because you don't do it for yourself, really, And so, yeah, I think what I hope that feminism very much contributes to this. But as I said, for me, I'm a participant in a greater struggle, and that is the struggle for equality for all people. Because if one of us is chained, we are all not truly free. And I truly believe that. And I think the people who oppress us too are living in chains. I mean, gosh, imagine holding that much hatred in your heart. Imagine holding that much hatred in your heart for a people, for a person, so much so that you do not want them to be equal to you. They're right. They're born right. Everybody is born free. And for you to feel it is your right to chain them, I feel like that's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders too, and on the shoulders of your children and their children. And yeah, so I just think it's really important that we as feminists and we as people who claim that we want to fight and struggle and be in the front line or whatever, beyond, Twitter activism, or if you are a social media activist, whatever, like, the point is that if you claim that you are an activist and you claim that you believe in these things, do it because it's part of a greater struggle, and that's for the liberation of all people. I am not free if my LGBTQI brothers and sisters aren't free. I'm not free if my disabled brothers and sisters aren't free. I'm not free if black men are not free. I am not free if other black women are not free. I'm not free if white women are not free, quite frankly, because solidarity is something that we need to show all people, basically. And so yeah, in 10 years' time, I hope the world looks a lot brighter. You know, there are small positives, there are small signs that things are changing. There is dissonance, and it's the kind of dissonance that you can't ignore. And so yeah, I think it's very, very important that we notice what's happening now. And yeah, and anything I can do to be part of that positive change, I will do it. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying.